Hello and welcome to another episode of my skill system series. In this video we are going to create our skill slot and add a completely customizable hotkey bar to our main widget. To start off, I would like to go into our materials folder and create a new material that we will call m_cooldown or something like radial cooldown. Then we will open that up. Set the material domain to user interface and the blend mode to translucent. Then we will hold down 3 and left click, get a basic vector here, convert that to a parameter called color. And let's make that white by default. We can plug that in for our final color. So now we've got just a white square, but we want to mask that in a radial way, so we can basically use that as some kind of progress bar to display how much of the cooldown we have already completed. So that we will do with our opacity here. Let's take the opacity of our color and multiply that. So the A comes from our color. Let's plug that in for opacity. And for the B, we will need to do a bit of math here. Get our texture coordinate 0. Then we will subtract. And for the constant b here, let's just type in 0.5. And let's go into a multiply node again. So that will be our A. And for b, we will hold down 2 and left click to get a 2-dimensional vector. Plug that in for b. And for r, we will type in -2. And for green, 2. That constant 2 vector here will define the direction in which our progress bar will be animated. And once we've got that multiplied, let's search for vector to radial value. Then we will plug in the vector converted to angle into the multiply. As you can see here, we've got that radial gradient starting here and becoming darker and darker. But now we want to control that using a %. So let's hold down 1 click, call it %, set the default value to 0.1 and slider max to 1. And we want to add. So we've got that add node here. The % is our A, and the vector converted to angle is the B. Before we plug that in for the B, we also have to call a floor, then plug that in. And you can see that 0.1% mask here. Everything else is dark. And because we set that up with parameters, we can now create a material instance called mi_skill cooldown. If you double click to open that up, you can expand the parameter groups. Let's go to the scalar parameters, %. I can control this to mask that. And this is how our cooldown will be displayed. So when it starts, it will go like this until the skill is ready again. Set that back to 0.1 and we will change the color to black. Save and close the m_skill cooldown. Let's go to our widgets folder and create a new widget blueprint called W for widget_skill hotkey, and we will open that up. Again, desired on screen like we always do when creating widgets. Remove the canvas panel. Instead, we want to start with a size box and check width and height override. Values I'm going to use is 100 pixel for width and 130 for height. Then I'm going to add a vertical box to the size box, and inside of that vertical box start with a border. This border we will set horizontally aligned center as well as vertically aligned center. It will have a padding of 2,0. Let's go to the brush color, make that black with an alpha of 0.5 maybe, then hit OK. Also we want to add a text to the border, which we want to call hotkey name, and make that a variable. For the default text, you can type in squared brackets left, something like that. Lower the font size to 18 pixel. For the color, use something like a light gray. Yeah, should work. We will also give that an opaque shadow. And justification will be text center. Alright, that's it for our border. Then we will add another size box to the vertical box. Check width and height override again, and this time it will be 100 by 100 pixel. We will set the size to fill and vertically align it to the bottom, just so that there is a bit of space in between the border and the size box. In there, start with an overlay and then add a button, because we want to be able to click our skill and cast it. This button will be set to horizontally and vertically fill. We can give that a name like skill button. Expand the style, and for normal we want to use our skill border texture that you hopefully downloaded in the last episode. Draw that as an image. Let's copy normal and paste it for hovered, but here we can just adjust the tint to be something like a light yellow or an orange, something like that. Then let's copy hovered, paste it for pressed, and make that tint slightly darker. Should work. Also copy normal once again and paste that for disabled. Further, what we want to do is uncheck is enabled by default. Then let's add an image to the overlay, not to the button. This will be set to fill, and it will be called the base. Sure, it's a variable. Give that a padding of 2 so it fits inside of our skill button border thing. Go to the color and opacity, leave it at white, but let's increase the alpha to 0.2. And we want to set the visibility to hit test invisible. Add another image to our overlay. Again, set that to horizontally and vertically fill. Padding of 2, call that skill icon. And by default we could select the fireball, icon fireball, see how it will look. And we will set the visibility of that to hidden, because only if the skill is assigned to that hotkey we want to show it. Button save. And one thing you notice, it's still visible in the editor. If you don't want that to happen, just click that little eyeball here. Add another image to the overlay, which will be called the cooldown image. Make that fill horizontally and vertically, padding of 2. Like we did before. And for the image we want to select our mi underscore skill cooldown, so the material instance we just created, and you will see that appearing here. What we want to do here is go to the color and opacity, lower that to 0.7, I would say. We will also set this to hidden by default, and now if you want to adjust the starting point of your radial progress bar, you can either do that in the material with the 2-dimensional vector, or you can go to transform, and for example we could set the scale in y to -1 and then rotate it by 90 degrees. Also toggle the visibility here, because by default it's set to hidden. And then there is one thing left, which is a basic text on top of our overlay. Make that a variable, call it cooldown text. So this will display the actual amount of seconds we need to wait until the skill is up again. Make that align center in both dimensions. Text by default can say something like 0.1. We will make that wide with an alpha of 0.8, but give it an outline of 1 pixel. Also we can increase the font size here to 28. And justification will be align text center. By default this text will be set to hidden as well. And let's toggle the editor visibility. Compile and save. We will also go to the graph here, add a variable called Hotkey. So the key you need to press in order to activate this skill. This will be a key and editable and exposed on spawn, because later on we will generate those skill hotkeys and then we want to tell them which hotkey they are assigned to. And on event construct, what we need to do is get the hotkey name, set text, and for the in text let's use format text. The format here will be in squared brackets and then in curly brackets key name. If you want to figure out the key name, drag in the hotkey and off of it search for get display name. So for example, for spacebar that would be space, or for left mouse button LM, something like that. Plug that in for the key name. Also what we want to do is get our cooldown image and get dynamic material, because we need to access our percent value later. Then get the return value, promote to variable, and let's call that cooldown material. Alright, compile, save our widget and close it. Now we want to create another widget blueprint called w_hotkey row. Open that up. Again, decide on screen. Let's remove the canvas panel, and the only thing we want to add is a horizontal box. Make that a variable, call it box. Head over to the graph and let's add some variables. So first off, we have the hotkeys. This will be a key array, which is editable and exposed on spawn. And then we'll add another variable that is the slots widgets, or just slot widgets. And that will be a w_scale hotkey reference array. Add a function called generate hotkeys. Better would be generate hotkey row. Give that an output, which we will call generated slots, and that will be a w_skill hotkey reference array again. The only thing we need to do here is get our hotkeys and run a for each loop. And for every element we want to create widget, type here will be w_skill hotkey, and the hotkey will come from our array element. Connect the loop body. Also we want to add that to our slot widgets array. So add, connect the return value, line that up here before adding it to the box. So we can call add child or add child to horizontal box, doesn't matter, and connect the return value again. On completed, we want to go into a return node, and what we will return is the slot widgets array. Compile and save. That means we can already close the w_hotkey row, and we need to make some changes to our main widget. So let's go in here. First, on our graph we need some variables. So what we need to have here is an array of all the hotkeys. So this will be a key array again, editable and exposed on spawn, because we rather want to store that in our playable character and then just pass it through to our widget, as well as an integer called keys per row, also editable and exposed on spawn, but an integer and only a single variable. Last one we need here is an array called all hotkey slots. So all of the slots that are in the different rows. That will be an array again of the type scale hotkey reference. File it. Let's open up our third person character or skill character, and let's add some variables. So first one here will be the integer called hotkeys per row. As I said, that will be an integer. Compile and save. You can set the default value to 6. Then add another variable called hotkeys, and this will be a key array. Compile and save it, and let's add some default values. So here I will start with F6. I will show you in a second why, and let's go to F11. I will just very quickly add them. So F7, F8, F9, F10, F11. The reason I didn't use F1 and F2 is because when we play in the editor and hit F1 for example, you can see that toggles wire mode, so this key is already used for something. That is no problem if you package the game, but since I will be testing in the editor quite a lot for me, that is a problem. So we will start with F6 and then go up to F11. Exit play mode here and go back to our skill character. Then in our hotkeys we can also add 1 to 6. Finally 6. And once we've got our hotkeys set up, we will need to go to event begin play, drag in our hotkeys and get them, connect them, as well as our hotkeys per row. Also need to connect those. Compile, save, close the skill character, go back to your main widget, and on the designer tab we will add a vertical box that we will call Hotkey row container, and let's make that a variable, anchor it to the lowest center, position X will be 0 and Y minus 45. It will be size to content and the alignment in X will be 0.5, in Y it will be 1. Go back to the graph, let's add a function here called generate hotkeys. It will have an input called hotkeys to generate, which will be an array of keys. And what we want to do with that is promote it to a local variable called local hotkeys. Directly after that, promote it to another local variable, which we will call local modified hotkeys. After we set both of them, we want to go into a branch, and what we want to check for is whether the local hotkeys last index is less than keys per row minus 1. Connect that to the check and then to the branch. So basically what this will say, if it's true, we only need to create one row. If not, we need multiple ones. So let's do the true path first. What we want to do there is create a widget, which will be a hotkey row. The hotkeys will be our local hotkeys, so connect them. And after we did that, we can drag in our hotkey row container, add child to vertical box, connect the return value. Also, off of the return value of the create node, we want to call generate hotkey row. Drag in our all hotkey slots, and we want to append the generated slots to that all hotkey slots array. If it's false, however, we will get our local modified keys and resize them by the keys per row. Then let's copy over what we did before, but instead we don't want to create the row for all of the local hotkeys, only for the modified hotkeys that we just resized. We will worry about the rest after that. So after we append it to the all hotkey slots array, we will get our local modified hotkeys, so all of the keys that we already handled right now. Run it for each loop and drag in the local hotkeys, remove element or remove item, and connect the array element. So after that loop is completed, our local hotkeys will only contain those keys that we haven't created a row for yet. And to do that, we can just call generate hotkeys, so the function we are inside of right now. The hotkeys to generate being the local hotkeys, so the rest that was dealt with before. Compile and save. Go to the event graph and on event construct call generate hotkeys with a hotkey array being the hotkeys to generate. Alright, if we compile and save now, it should already be working. So if I hit play, you can see all of our hotkeys from F6 to F11 in the first row, and because we set up 6 per row, we can see exactly 6 here. In the lower row we see the keys 1 to 6. Alright, that's it for setting up our basic hotkey slot and hotkey rows. In the next video we will deal with a skill actor and handle assigning skills to hotkeys and actually using them. Alright, see you in the next episode.